good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We have a special guest, and we've been having a good series this summer. And tonight we have Bob Swain with us. He is the preacher down at the Aniana Church of Christ, and has been there for how many years now? 25 years at the same congregation. And what a blessing. I know he has been to them, and I've had the privilege of going down there. And I tell you what, that church family loves Bob and Ashley and their family. And they are just a part of that family. And what a great example they are. And the Aniana Church sets for all the other churches in North Alabama. And so I really appreciate them. Bob was the big man on campus when I got to Faulkner University. And so I really looked up to him a lot. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot. And one of the reasons I'm in ministry. And so I love him very much. I would consider him, he's not that much older than me, but I still consider him a mentor and of course, a very good friend. So I'm excited for you to get to hear from Bob tonight. His youngest just graduated high school, is headed to Southern Union. Oh, he just finished his freshman year. Okay, I'm a year off. And but his daughter also is down there at that school in that eastern part of the state. Yeah, that one. And you'll see her on TV. She's on the sidelines. I've noticed her on the sidelines a couple times when I've had to watch that team play. And come on up, Bob. I'm going to say a prayer with you, and then we'll turn it over to you. Let's pray for Bob. Father, thank you so much for Bob coming our way. We pray that you would just bless him and his family. Thank you so much for his ministry and what it means to the community in Aniana. We pray, Father, that you would just continue to bless it, that church would grow, and that it would have more influence, Father, and that it would just continue to change hearts and lives there in that community, and just that it would be a wonderful glory to your name, Father. We just praise you and thank you for our friend Bob, and we just ask you to continue to walk with him, bless him every single day, Father. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, Trey. Where are all the young people that were sitting right up here a minute ago? They're in class? Okay, so I'm talking to the parents. Okay, because I didn't know if the young people would be in here. And so I kind of built a lesson to hit them. But now that I know they're here, do we have college kids in here? Okay, so I'm going to talk to y'all, and I'm going to drop out the stuff that I was going to gear towards them. And I think it'll help you. Title of the lesson that Trey assigned me, like I said, Trey and I have been friends for a long time, and when he gave me this title, we're friends anymore. The title of the lesson, my wife texted me earlier. She's like, "Where are you going?" And I told her, because last night I was at Talladega. They do their summer series on Tuesday night, so I spoke in Talladega last night. And she said, "Where are you going tonight?" And I said, "Decatur, at Beltline, where Trey is." She said, "What's your subject?" And I said, "It's empowering young Christians to face the challenges of college and culture." She said, "Oh, boy." And I said, "I know, right?" And but when you assigned me this, I don't know if he did it because he knew I had college-age kids. I love kids. I love college-age kids, and I love teenagers. When I first graduated from Faulkner, I went and worked as a youth minister for 5 years. The preacher quit after I'd been there 2, so I took on the duties of preaching and youth ministry. When I left there, I moved to another town to be the pulpit minister that had a college town in Louisiana. Tech was in Ruston, Louisiana. So I hired on as pulpit minister / college minister, and I worked there for a few years before I burnt out and said, I've got to get back to small town preaching. It's what I was raised in. It's what I was accustomed to. So I moved to Podunk, Alabama, Aniana, little bitty town. The preacher in Priceville, his name was Bobby South. He actually told me there's a little bitty church over here looking, and I came, tried out, took the position. The congregation was about 45 people on a good Sunday. And it was more what I was accustomed to. And I was able to slow down my pace of life. Plus, we started having kids. And so I wanted to be able to spend time with my kids. And we moved there. And now, on a good Sunday, we run about 180 folks. The congregation has grown and grown. We built a new building 10 years ago. Matter of fact, we're having a celebration next Sunday because they took out a 30-year loan to pay for the building. And we paid it off the first of this month. Very generous congregation, very good people. But when my kids got old enough, when I first moved there, I was 29. So when I moved there as the preacher, they said, if we get any kids, and as the kids sort of grew, they said, work with our teens. So I worked with the teens. Then as my kids were born and got into their younger years, I said, let me step out of working with the teens. And then when my kids went into the teen group, guess what I got to do? I'm still, for 9 years now, I'm the deacon, even though I'm not a deacon, in charge of youth and teenagers. So I work with a lot of kids over the years. For 31 years, I've directed the third session of Sardis Lake Christian Camp in Batesville, Mississippi. Just finished it 2 weeks ago. And I work with kids, and I'm around them all the time. And I used to feel really connected with kids until the last few years. And if it wasn't for the fact that I have an 18-year-old, I probably would not connect with them. They use language that I don't understand. They're different. And it's harder to connect with them for me, especially now that I'm sliding up into my 50s. I just find it harder and harder. But my kid helps me with that. So when you have a lesson like this on try to help kids prepare for college and culture, well, what is culture? Culture is to us what water is to fish. It's where we live. It's what we do. And you create a culture in your home. We create a culture within this church. And a lot of times when kids grow up and you send them off to that other school down in Tuscaloosa or to that other school in the east, I'm an LSU fan. I've been raised in Louisiana. I do root for the other Tigers now because I got a daughter that's going into her senior year there, and you tend to root for where you send your money. But it's hard. Both of my kids, when they first left from small town living and small church culture to go down to a church that, she called me the first day, she goes, "Daddy, I went to church." And I said, "Well, good, I expected you to." She said, "They've got a praise team." And I said, "What do I do?" And I said, I would keep going and listening and see what it's all about. But it was a little bit of a culture shock for her to just go to a church that does things a little different. And she was like, "That's a little different." I said, "When I moved here, we didn't have PowerPoint. But now we're a little different, And I said, it just aids us in what we're doing. And she's adjusted to it. And my son went down there, and he struggled with it. And so culture is what we make it. So I would suggest to you as parents, times change, and as times change, culture changes. But you've got to talk to your kids. You've got to talk to your young people and prepare them for that culture shock if they are leaving home. And you've got to help them as young Christians to be prepared for that. And things are different. I listened to Aerosmith and watched Three's Company. I don't know that my kids have ever seen Three's Company, So there's going to be a little bit of a culture shock from what they watched to what you watched. My dad watched Gunsmoke, right? But culture changes as things change, and we've got to sort of in some way be a little bit fluid and roll with it and understand that not all culture changes are bad. Some of them are just natural. They just happen. But there are some that are bad. And before we really get into the meat of what I want to talk to you about, recognize that culture shapes us. The culture you're raised in, the culture you're a part of shapes us. But bigger than that, I think one of the things you need to impress upon your young people, if you have the opportunity, is to help them recognize that since culture shapes us, we have to come to the recognition that we can also shape culture. We can be different. We can stand out. We can let our light shine. We can be a light that is very positive. And we have to realize that our story as a Christian is much bigger than the ever-changing cultural moment we live in. And I think that's really part of the key before we really get into saying, hey, here's some specific things that I think you need to talk to your kids about and make sure they're prepared for. Recognize that your story as a Christian is much bigger than the cultural moment that you live in. Because like I said, culture is going to change and things are going to change. So, parents, prepare your young people for what society and our culture will throw at them. It's your job. I was thinking about what to say, and I thought that y'all are never going to invite me because I'm going to say it is your job to teach and train your kids. You brought them into this world. It is your responsibility. And I know a lot of parents want to be their kid's buddy and want to be their friend, and that, well, we can't offend them and we can't hurt their feelings. Yes, you can. It is your job to hurt their feelings and train them in the way that they should go. And sometimes when they're going on the wrong path, correct them, instruct them, guide them. If your daughter brings home a boy that is an absolute bum and bad for her, run him off. It is your job to protect them. If that person was there to harm your kid physically, you would kill him or run him off, right? If he's there to harm your kid spiritually, run him off. I'm not going to say kill him because we're live streaming, right? But run him off. Get rid of him. Do the same thing, mamas. If he brings home a little girl and you know that little girl is bad news, run her off. There's nothing wrong with it. I know I can't tell my kids who they can be friends with. Yes, you can. It is your job. If you want to cultivate a culture that will protect your kids, yes, I know they've got to be diverse, and I know that you can't just say live inside this bubble. But if they bring home somebody that you can tell because you've been around the block and you've got some experience, and I'm looking out here tonight and I'm going, I'm not only talking to parents, I'm talking to some grandparents. Let me tell you what, those kids love you, they respect you, and they respect your opinion. If you bring home a real bum, if your grandkid brings home a real bum, there's nothing wrong with you saying, honey, you know I love you, but you're not getting a Christmas card unless you run him off, right? Nothing wrong with that. Run off the bad influences on your kids and prepare our kids for that culture shock. And sometimes I think the kids, they don't like that word train. If I say train your kids, because you say that and kids go, we're not dogs. You can't train us like dogs. Yeah, train means teach. I trained my dog to sit, to stay, to not bark when she's not supposed to. I taught my dog that. What is your job as parents? Is to train your children. The Bible even says that. Train up a child in the way it should go, and when he's older, will not depart from it. There's nothing wrong with teaching your kids. So train them, teach them good principles. And I will say this. I work a lot with, I'm not a counselor, and I'm not a therapist. But I went back to school a few years, did you know I went back to school and got my master's a few years ago during COVID? And when I got my master's, it's a little heavy on the counseling side, even though I'm not a licensed counselor or therapist. I work, for a lot of years now, I've been the chaplain of the police department in Aniana. So I work with trauma and guys who have been in critical incidents. And I work a lot with young people who've had traumatic experiences. I think sometimes, let me just give you a little bit of parental advice that I've learned from the psychological world mixed with a little bit of spiritual, whatever you want to call it, in there. I think sometimes we say, okay, I'm going to train my kid, I'm going to teach my kid, and we train and teach our young people using what I call the line approach. The line approach. Y'all ever heard of that? I know you have. You right now, you don't know that's what it's called, but you've ever used the line approach. I personally don't think it's a good approach, and y'all know what that is, don't you? I'm going to draw a line in the sand, and I'm not going to cross that line. Have you ever taught your kid that way? Let me give you an example. Boy brings home a really cute little 16-year-old. Your 17-year-old son brings home a really cute little 16-year-old girl. You say, okay, well, the preacher said we got to train our kids, so as soon as she leaves, I'm going to sit my son down, I'm going to have a talk with him. All right, son, she's really cute. You better draw the line in the sand of what you're willing to do with that little girl. Is that the best approach? To train your kids and tell your kids, hey, set your boundaries? We've heard that before, right? Let me tell you the problem with the line approach. We're really bad at drawing lines. And we're even worse about whenever we draw a line in the sand. You know what we do? We live right here on it. And if we live right here on it, guess what's going to happen? We're going to shuffle it away, and we're going to draw a new line. Every young person in here, and every one of you who used to be a young person, you remember when you crossed those lines? Not the best approach, is it? The first question you need to teach your kids not to ask is not, where do I draw the line? The first question you need to teach your kids to ask is, who am I as a Christian? What type of person am I? If you're talking to young Christians, that was the title of my lesson, was Enabling Young Christians. So you're talking to somebody who's already been baptized, they've been raised in church. Who are they? I'm somebody who won't cross that line. Is that who you are? Is somebody who sets the line, and that's who identifies you as, I'm not somebody who, I'm a Christian first. Have that talk with your kid. When he brings home that young girl, talk to that young man and say, hey, you remember who you are, don't you? That'll solve the line issues. Because it'll place the line out there where it should be. It should solve. I wish I could tell you with all confidence, that'll solve the line issues. But every young Christian I know has crossed some lines. Because that's what we do. We do that mentality. Where do I draw the line? Does this cross the line? I think the problem with that approach is, like I said, we're terrible at drawing lines. And we're even worse about smudging those lines and redrawing them once we've crossed them and saying, I never crossed the line. What about the line you drew first, back up at the top of the beach? You know, we went to the beach one time, and I was actually talking to my son about this very subject. And I said, hey, you ever heard that? Let's draw a line in the sand. He's like, yeah. I said, when we get to the beach, I want you to draw a line in the sand. He thought I was going to tackle him or wrestle him or something. I said, draw a line in the sand. We crossed the dune onto the beach. He went all the way right down to the water's edge and drew a line right there where it's flat. He said, it was the line to keep me from drowning. I said, oh, no, just asking you to draw a line in the sand. It was while I was studying some of this, and I was just wondering, where would he draw? He drew it right where the water could get it. After a little while, guess what happened to his line? Gone. The waves had crashed against it, and the line was gone. We're really bad at drawing lines sometimes. We put it right against that which will harm us or hurt us, and after continued battering, guess what? It's gone. I don't think that's the best approach. I think the better approach is, who are we? I'll read a passage to you from 1 Peter, and I want to read chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to his great mercy, has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that's imperishable, undefiled, unfading, and kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for salvation ready to be revealed. That's who we are. We are people who believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We have reenacted it, and we believe that God is holding an inheritance for us. And if we want to receive that inheritance, we need to live in accordance with what God's word is. So I think that's a better question, is what defines me? Rather than where will I draw the line, or does that cross the line? And I talk to your kids too. I believe that God puts us where we need to be when we need to be. I've talked to a lot of young people about this, that why did this happen and where did this happen? Acts chapter 17, remember when Paul was speaking in the Areopagus and he's talking to the unknown God? He said, let me declare him unto you. When you get down to about verse 26 and 27, he says, God sets our boundaries and our times. I'm pretty big on telling my young people, and I believe it myself, I believe God puts you where you need to be when you need to be. And if you'll look for that opportunity to do good, if you'll look for that way of escape when temptation comes, you're where you need to be when you need to be there. And I believe God will guard us, guide us, protect us, and you can't escape that cultural moment you live in. God put you there. So keeping that in mind, what do I need to tell y'all? What time did I start? I told you I wouldn't overgo. What do y'all need to know? What would I share with you to help young people, to help young Christians be ready for college? And I've got two of them that are in it, in the thick of it. Number one, this is just my thoughts. I think you need to sit young people down, parents, grandparents, and talk to them about what we'll call information overload. Information overload. Say, well, what do you mean by that? That kid, from the time you allowed it, has had one of these in their hand. Y'all remember when somebody used to say, you remember that movie we watched back in college, Todd? And you say, yeah, who started that? I don't know. You know, I don't know. And now, and what would we do? We'd have to wait a week or so till it popped in one of our heads. Oh, it was Sandra Bullock or whoever. Not anymore. Nowadays, what do you say? Who was in that movie? I don't know. The kid in the corner goes, it was Julia Roberts. Have you ever seen that movie? Nope, but I Googled it. We live in the age of information overload, and y'all are pretty bad. We're pretty bad, right? Young people, and y'all know. I'm preaching to the choir, ain't I? Y'all know how bad it is. You see them, they're addicted to it. And they're so inundated with information, and I think it's a problem. I sat down with young people while I was at camp. I sat down with our young people. I actually did mock interviews at the high school in the local town where I'm at, because I wear a lot of hats. I'm the preacher, I'm the chaplain, I'm also the voice of the Redskins. I call the football games, and I do a lot of volunteering at the school. And they asked me to come do some mock interviews with 8th graders. And one of the last questions I asked part of the interview, I said, you got one of these? Yes, sir. Is it good or bad? 95% of them said bad. They recognize it themselves. Information overload. Google, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. All you have to say is something went viral, and they know what it means, right? And even song lyrics. Every one of these things is trying to influence those kids, and guess what? It does. It influences them. So, when you realize that every song lyric and every movie and every Instagram reel and every TikTok video that they watch is an idea, and ideas have consequences. Bad ideas can have dire consequences. And so you recognize they're being hit with this all the time. I think it would be important to sit down and say, hey, put a monitor on or check your usage. Your phone will tell you. How many iPhone users we got? And people just hate iPhones, so you have to have the Samsungs okay. I know there's a few. The thing I do like about my iPhone is this: every Sunday morning when I get up before I go to church, a little thing pops up. You have to turn it on your settings, and it tells me how much my screen time was up or down this week. And it blows my mind every week how much I'm on my phone, to the point where it almost guilts me into throwing it out the window. And I thought it was bad until I saw my son's phone one Sunday morning. I'm really good on my phone compared to that 18-year-old. Hours a day. And I know it counts every phone call, every text conversation, every Snapchat conversation, every time you're just sitting there scrolling. We cannot control what ideas our kids will see. But how many times do you ever have a conversation with your kid and they say something, you go, how'd you know about that? Well, I saw it on TikTok. I saw it on this, or I saw it on that. They're being inundated with all this information. So keep an open dialogue about what your young people see. Talk to them about it. Hey, what you looking at? Oh, tell me about that. Tell me what you're watching. Oh, you watching a series or something? Tell me about it. Keep that open dialogue because you know who is on there making content on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram? You know what they're called? Somebody who creates these videos and puts them on there. Do you know the new name for that? Influencer. Used to be a YouTube creator or a YouTube personality or a TikTok person. Now, you get on TikTok, scroll through it, and they'll say, hi, I'm so-and-so, an influencer. You know why they call themselves that? Because what is their intention on creating that content? To influence the person who sees it. Talk to your young people about what is influencing them. And maybe even talk to them about maybe putting it down. Talk openly and often. Hey, what's going on? What are you looking at on your phone? Let's talk a little bit. Here's another challenge, I think. Let's talk about identity. You say, hey, what is something young Christians need to be talked about before they get out in the world and face college and face culture? They need to talk about identity. What does it mean to be who you are? Our society has messed this up big time. Our society has defined or told us that what defines us is absolutely not what needs to be what defines us. Y'all remember 15 years ago when the very first NBA player came out openly as gay? He made the cover of the magazine, and that was what, I'm out. I'm openly this. Is that his identity? You look around the world today, what are people identifying themselves as? You know, used to, we talked about sex in terms of a person's behavior. Nowadays, when you talk about sex, it's who we are. And that's where our world, our society, our culture has messed it up because our young people are fixing to be thrust into a world. They already are. They're in high school. They are already thrust into a world where people are identifying based on their sexuality. That's your behavior. It's not your identifying fact. And we used to talk about it that way. But the modern version of it, and I think we identify in so many different ways, but you ever hear preachers stand up and preach? I don't know if you've ever done this, Trey. You ever hear preachers today stand up and preach about things we ought not do and things we ought not do in church, and they say, and we need to avoid idolatry. You ever preached on idolatry? You hit on it because it's in the Bible, right? And every time you say that, everybody goes, well, the Israelites needed that because they were in that culture of the Canaanites and the Philistines and the Edomites and the Amorites and all these idol-worshiping people who lived around them. And they needed to be warned against idolatry. I mean, God, even in the Ten Commandments, said, have no other gods before me. We, in 2024, don't need lessons on idolatry. I say we need it worse than ever because the societies that surround us are filled with idolatry. You mean to say the gods that we worship? I'll start with the letter S. We worship self. We worship state. You might be saying, not right now because everything's confused. Did you watch the debate? We worship sex. We worship science. We worship stuff. We put those on the pedestal where God deserves to be. And we need to tell our young people, hey, don't be idol worshipers. Watch yourself. Watch the state. Watch the identity. And this may be a little bit redundant because I just told you we live in the information age and your kid is just pelted with information. Talk to your young people about technology. Talk to them about the technology they have because they're walking around with a computer that would have sent our space program to the moon in their pocket. These things are pretty amazing, aren't they? I mean, I love it. I love my technology, and I'm in my 50s, and my mom, before she passed, she was in her 80s, and all she wanted was an iPad and me to teach her how to text and send emojis. And it was the hardest. And my dad had that old computer. It was the worst conversations I ever had with my dad before he passed was trying to talk him into how to put a hyphen in a Microsoft Word document. You know? His understanding of technology is way different than my understanding. My understanding of technology is way different from your kids and your college-age people's understanding of technology. Talk to them about that technology. And when you say, well, what do you mean? Talk about it. This is the primary thing I would talk to them about it because this generation that's coming up through high school, fixing to go to college, they are suffering from a condition that I like to call together alone. Technology that they're carrying in their pocket, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever they use to connect, they are suffering from what I call being together alone. Oh, it connects us. No, it doesn't. It doesn't create genuine connections. I have a son who graduated high school at 17 and left for college at 17. He turned 18 7 days after he left for college. One day as we're riding along, he pulls out his Snapchat, and I see he got a whole lot of unread messages. And I said, well, who are those? Oh, just people. I said, well, who are they? Well, just people I've met. I said, where? On here? Yeah. You know, you have to follow somebody, right, in order for them to be one of your friends. You can't just randomly, you have to like them, they like you. I don't know exactly the term. I think it's follow is Instagram, Snapchat, I'm not sure what it is. But I asked him, I said, how many friends you got on Snapchat? 4,138. I was like, do you know these people? Nope. I wondered why his phone was going burr, 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 all the time. And they're not messaging each other. They're sending pictures of their forehead, right? Or the bottom of the car or whatever. Just they have to keep their streaks, which is where a picture to a picture. So here's my shoe. Okay, here's the top of the car. They're not communicating. But do you feel, I asked him, I said, do you feel connected through that? Well, not really. I said, good. We were riding on a 3-hour ride going to Louisiana. I said, well, during this ride, I want you to pull your phone out. I want you to delete 3,000 of those people. What? I said, I'm not kidding. I said, do that or lose your phone. 3,000 of them gone. I want everybody gone off that phone that you don't know in real life. It took him 3 hours to delete all of them. But he did, and I tell you what, talk to him about technology because, you know, God said it's not good that man should be alone. And I think the technology that we have keeps us alone. It keeps us separated. And we don't have those real moments. And we struggle because of social media offers a false sense of intimacy and no real connection. It's dangerous because it teaches the young people they're the center of their universe. It teaches them that they deserve to be happy all the time. It teaches them that I have choices. And information is all I need. I don't need real teachers or mentors. This can be my teacher and mentor. No, it can't. Make sure your young person understands that. Now, I'm going to cut it down. I told you I was going to. If the young people were in here, I was going to talk to them about one of the dangers I think they'll face, and that's pornography. It's out there. It's everywhere. And don't buy into the cultural lies. I was going to talk to them about that we live in a hookup culture. And if you don't know what that is, that means hookup, when we were young, meant making out. But nowadays, hookup can mean everything from making out to actual intimacy. And if you think that that's not a problem, even in the young people of the church, you need to wake up. Because our young people in the church leave and go sometimes to state colleges. And the culture nowadays is dating is dead, and let's hook up first to see whether or not we like each other. That's a problem. And we need to, if you have a young man, especially going off to college, you need to warn him and tell him, son, this is what you're going to face. Help him navigate his dating. And I know that the young people are going to fight on the sexual orientation battlefield. They're going to fight with the alphabet community. And teach your young people what the Bible says about those things. That's all. I don't need to go into that in any depth. Just teach your children what the Bible says. Never be hateful or mean to anybody, but teach your children what the Bible teaches about that. And teach your children, you don't have to buy into somebody else's. Somebody came walking in right now and said, I'm a purple elephant. Okay. Are they? No, they're standing there wearing khakis and a blue shirt. They're obviously not a purple elephant. But when they try to force you, you have to accept the fact that I'm a purple elephant. Call me a purple elephant. No, I don't. And I don't have to quote a Bible verse at you. Matter of fact, I can throw science back at you about chromosomes and how many genders there actually are, but I do not have to buy into your delusion and participate in it. And teach your young people that that's okay. It's not being rude or ugly to tell somebody. Matter of fact, it may be actually being harmful. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm this, and it's obvious that they're not, it may be harmful to play into their delusion and let them continue believing that. Now, this I texted Trey earlier. I said, how personal can I be? He said, whatever, man. And I told him tonight, right before I stood up, I said, they may run me off and never invite me back again. Is all of this important? The last point I was going to make, and I'm going to say it to you, since the young people aren't here. Okay? I want you to catch this point, because this comes from the very bottom, most sincere part of my heart. Catch this point. Put it right here. Put it right here. One of the biggest things you can do as an adult, as a parent, as a grandparent, who is deeply involved in the lives of your young Christian, recognize and look for trauma. If they have experienced trauma, whether it be somebody abusing them or bad events happening, recognize it and either talk to them or get them to talk to somebody. My 17-year-old last summer, before school started, had a very, very close friend. Her name was Kylie. Went everywhere together, went to ball games. They weren't dating. She was chasing somebody and he was chasing somebody, and they were wingmans for each other, but they were very closest of friends. She was at our house. They did theater shows together. And the beginning of last summer, she was killed in a car wreck right in the middle of town. Chief of police called me as a chaplain and said, there's been a bad car wreck. Can you be there? So I'm going to be there in 3 minutes. I pull up to the scene, and there she is in the car. My son, before I could even turn around, calls me and said, hey, there's been a bad car wreck, and I've heard that it's so-and-so in Kylie. Is it true? The helicopter was taken off. And I said, yeah. He says, Kylie in the helicopter? I said, no. Trauma. I recognize it. I tried to talk to him. The problem is, I'm his dad. And am I trained in critical incidents and trauma? Yeah, I've studied it. Been to school for it. 3 weeks later, my father, who my son and I went on bucket list trips with for the past 6 years, to Las Vegas, to see the Grand Canyon, to South Dakota, to see the faces on the mountain, as Dad called it, Mount Rushmore, passed away. He started school at Southern Union 3 weeks after that. He runs cross country, so they were having early morning practice, and 2 weeks into school, on his way to practice on the interstate, the car in front of him flipped over, ejected 2 teenagers, and killed them in his presence. I knew it was bad. I'm now hours away, trying every day to call, text, "You okay, son? Talk to me." I knew it was bad. He had a thing with his leg where he had to come home over Christmas holiday. He started to kind of feel a little better, but he had to come home and have surgery on his leg over the Christmas holidays. He came home the first day he was home, right before he had surgery. The next day, he said, "I met a little girl, been on 3 dates with her." Like, sweet, maybe this will help. Over the break while he had surgery, she ghosted him. I don't know what that means. Quit talking altogether. No text, no answers, no nothing. He got back to school after the holidays. The reason that she had ghosted him is because over the holidays she'd committed suicide. The very next weekend, I get a call at 3 a.m. from the sheriff's office right outside of Auburn. "Your son wrecked his car. He's got a DUI and he's in jail here. We're going to let him call you in 15 minutes. This is a preacher's kid now. Kid leads singing every Sunday at church. Kid knows more Bible than I do almost. I mean, he's sharp as a tack. I thought I'd prepared him for all the stuff I just tried to share with y'all. And I think I did. I wasn't prepared for the trauma, nor was he. Recognize trauma in whatever form it comes, and talk to your young people about it, and get them the help they need. It was a Saturday night. I had to preach the next day when the call came at 3 a.m. So I woke his mom up and said, "Drive to Auburn, get him, pick him up out of jail, bring him home." She picked him up, brought him home. We get in the car to go back down to get his car out of impound, because all he told me was it had a flat tire, $7,000 worth of flat tire. We're driving back to Auburn, and I don't speak to him all the way from Aniana till Sylacauga. When finally he broke the ice, he said, "Dad, are you mad?" "Oh yeah, I'm mad." "Are you hurt?" "I'm hurt." He just hung his head, and I said, "But I get it, and I understand, and I love you, and it's going to be okay. And I should have done more to help you with your trauma." Because trauma, all he was doing is just running. Was he a drunkard? I don't think he was. It's just, he was down there in a culture where that's very prevalent, and he's hurting, and he's alone, and his sister, who they do live together. I bought a trailer down there. They live together. But guess what she's doing? She's on the sideline with the football team all fall. Every day till late at night, Saturdays all day long, Sundays. She don't want anything to do with her brother. She's got friends she wants to hang out with. So I put him down there by himself, isolated. He's home now for the summer, and he doesn't want to go back to school down there. And I told him it's fine. You don't have to. He's talked to some therapists. He's talked to some counselors. And I think he's going to be okay. He's running the sound system where I preach tonight for the summer series. Recognize the trauma if young people have it, and get them the help they need. Put them in contact with somebody who can help them. Let's close out with a prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for everything you bless us with, for the opportunity we have to be here tonight. Thank you for the invitation of this great congregation to let me come and speak, and help us as those who are a little older and a little wiser to help our young Christians navigate this world, and especially when they go off to college. Lord, it can be such a culture shock. Help us to talk to them about the things that will benefit them the most, and help us to recognize the trauma in their lives when it happens, whether it be the loss of a friend or someone mistreating them. Help us to recognize that and to guide them in the right direction, and put them in touch with the people that they genuinely can make connections with that will help them. And help us, Lord, to train them and teach them so that they stay in the church and remain faithful to your word. And when they start to date, Lord, that they bring the people that they're dating to Christ as well. And it's in Jesus' name we offer this prayer. Amen.